Hello and welcome to a new edition of No Nonsense with Pamela Wallen. Well, the heat has not melted the cold, cold heart of the Canadian electorate. 68% of voters believe Justin Trudeau should resign. Now, there's just a ton of new numbers from Darrell Bricker and the gang at Ipsos. Darrell, of course, is the CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs, a senior fellow at the Monk School. And I always like to say this because he won the Diamond Jubilee Medal for his volunteer work for the military, which he's done for many, many years in this country and continues to. So that's a whole separate thing. But we wanted to talk to him, and he's also the author of a half a dozen books at the very least. But we're going to focus, Darrell, welcome, on the numbers today. This is pretty direct. 68%. Take a hike.
Yeah, it really is rock bottom for the entire time of Justin Trudeau's career. I mean, he's gone through that full circle of D's, from darling to disappointment to disliked, and you can decide what the last D is. Depart, depart, I guess. It's the and I don't forget who it was that says that every political career ends in tears, and we're kind of at that spot now for Justin Trudeau.
Let's drill down a little bit in this because I don't know if this is a newer, it's new number today, but 44% think Pierre Poilievre would make the best prime minister because there's been a lot of uncertainty about him. Is that starting to solidify?
Yeah, it's really an interesting set of contradictions around Pierre Poilievre. So yes, by far he's up 4 points over the last time we polled about a month ago on preferred prime minister, and and actually running ahead of his party by a couple of points.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at his personal approval numbers, his numbers and Jagmeet Singh's are about the same.
Wow.
So the difference is that people are voting for change, and they don't see Jagmeet Singh as change. Right. And this is going to be one of the things that the NDP is going to have to spend some time thinking about relative to their future, what the payoff was for the deal that they did for the Liberal Party. They basically handed the concept of change, the authentic positioning of change over to the Conservatives, and what did they gain for that? And the answer is they've become so closely affiliated with the Liberal Party, the public's not really prepared to see a difference between them. And you see it through their leadership, which is that even if Poilievre and Singh have similar types of numbers, on most preferred prime minister, Poilievre is way ahead of Singh, and that's because he represents change, and that's what Canadians are looking for.
Well, the credibility thing for the NDP is just, it's become silly. We think the government is, is corrupt and there may be traitors in our midst, but we're going to back them anyway. It's pretty hard to keep that song and dance going.
I'm sure that there is a very rational reason for why the NDP is doing what it's doing, but I'm not privy to it. And it seems from a political strategy point of view to be pretty obscure. And I frankly, I'm public on this. I said it on X around the time of the budget. I said, now's the time, guys.
Yeah.
Bring them down. Because the problem is, you've now handed over the timing of you have the timing of the election now. They have the timing of the election going forward. And if these numbers are indicative of the potential for the prime minister to resign, you're going to be facing a resuscitated Liberal Party in the next election campaign with a new leader. You have them with their weakest leader at their weakest time right now. Jack Layton would have jumped on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Jagmeet Singh, and Ed Broadbent was an absolutely wonderful Canadian citizen, provided amazing public service. He's remembered very fondly, but the problem is he always lost.
Yeah.
He always lost. Jack Layton actually came close. If he would have lived, he probably would have been the next prime minister of Canada. So what is Jagmeet Singh's goal? What is the NDP's goal? Is it to just be the tail on the Liberal dog? And if that's the case, it's not a really motivating positioning for the future. They could have at least tried to get some cabinet seats or get some more promises or get
Yes, in
something.
exchange for this,
We haven't
absolutely.
heard, we haven't heard anything. And I'm sure that there's an explanation, but if your job is to get elected as the government of the country, if that's your job, I don't understand how what they just went through over the last few weeks
Yeah.
with the Liberal budget got them any closer to that. And in fact, the polling evidence shows that they are the furthest that they've been away from it since before Jack Layton.
Yeah.
It's just they've gone right back to what they were.
No, I mean, and if you were going to be the moral conscience of the nation, which they used to present themselves as, then you didn't have any hopes of winning. But he talks about himself constantly as being prime minister, and it just lacks credibility. I want to come back to this change issue. So, if the Liberals, okay, so 68% just say we want Justin Trudeau to resign. If there was a new Liberal leader next month, next fall, how would the numbers start to change? What are you seeing in the data?
So we have asked about that. There probably will be some impact, but until you see who the leader is, it's hard to really assess it. But we do have other circumstances that have taken place, and we've seen how a change in leadership affects the electoral prospects of a political party. So the one that's most synonymous for your viewers today, that because it's at the federal level that they would probably most remember, was Brian Mulroney in 1992, and he gave way to Kim Campbell. When she started into that election, she was actually tied with the Liberals. So the Tory vote numbers, the Conservative vote numbers, are actually worse than they are for Justin Trudeau right now. They went through a leadership convention. They got themselves back up to 33, which was tied with the Liberal Party to start in that election campaign. And then everything after that was that campaign's fault and that new leader's fault as to what happened in the campaign. But they got there. The changing leaders got them to a place where they could be competitive. And so that's probably the best analogy to
Yeah.
what's going on right now.
So
But the status quo is only going to get them what they have.
yeah. So if Mark Carney steps up, there may be a flurry of activity and the numbers go back up, but he will eventually wear the Liberal yoke around his neck.
Well, he will wear it less so than somebody like
And
Chrystia
others.
Freeland.
Okay.
Yeah, so somebody who's part of the Liberal caucus right now and part of the Liberal front bench right now will have a harder time showing difference than somebody like a Mark Carney would. The issue that Mark Carney has to deal with is that cost of living, inflation, interest rates are big issues right now. And would you want somebody in a debate to be a former central banker?
Yeah.
Isn't he part of the issue? And you can just see what the positioning is for that. And the other problem is the left. One of their characteristics when it comes to leadership is that the left needs to love. They need leaders who inspire them. They want leaders that they can really get behind and believe in. And we saw that with Justin Trudeau. He was from central casting for the Liberals in 2015. The big heart symbols and all this kind of stuff. That really passionate commitment to the change that he was offering. I don't see that in Mark Carney. Maybe he's capable of doing that, but I don't really see that. He seems more like somebody who would be appealing to your intellect as opposed to appealing to your heart.
It's the whole elite issue again, right? It's Ignatieff. It's, I'm smarter than you.
Yeah, and Senator, I think the important part about that the Conservatives need to keep in mind is none of this is about your policies, your leader, any of that. You're like Doug Ford was in the election in which Kathleen Wynne was succumbed to one of the biggest defeats I think the Liberal Party's ever taken in the province of Ontario, and that was that people were so done with not the policies, the actors. They were so done with them that all they wanted was something that was different. And that's what the Tories are benefiting from right now. And they have very cleverly kept out of detailed policy debates and proposing what they don't really need to do it. Doug Ford won that election without even putting out a platform.
Yeah.
He just said, I'm for change. And that's where Pierre Poilievre is right now. And the more authentically he looks like that's what his campaign is all about, that's what Canadians are buying into.
But let me ask you,
Go ahead.
sorry, one thing about that, which is because it's a criticism of the conservative approach or the conservative strategy at this point, and it can change on a dime. But if your attack is every day Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, and then they change leaders, then they also become a change candidate for better or worse with the flaws that you point out. Then you have to at that point try and change your strategy and say, oh, no, it's about liberals, it's about scandals. Is
Yeah,
that kind of a mistake?
uh, no, I don't think it's a mistake
Okay.
in that they're so well positioned right now, and the most obvious and the only thing they can position against is what exists.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to position against the hypothetical. And Justin Trudeau may stay. He may say, look, people climb Mount Everest every day. I'm going to climb my Mount Everest. But he's starting from kind of like the center of the earth and climbing Mount
Yes.
Everest. It's a pretty long way. It's not absolutely impossible. I mean, there's things can happen. Events, dear boy, events, as
Yes.
Howard McMillan used to say. But the truth is, there's nothing out there that suggests anything other than a massive defeat for the Liberal Party. And it's not just our polls; it's all the polls that
Yeah.
are out there. And
And there's time for the Conservatives to shift gears if there is a leadership change and then attack whoever it is, Mark Carney, about his record as a big businessman, the rich that Chrystia Freeland is so busy attacking these days.
if Pierre Poilievre wasn't campaigning against Justin Trudeau, probably the fight that he could have with Mark Carney would be a very invigorating fight for him.
Yeah.
And he would be in a good position to position Mark Carney in a certain way. I mean, the thing that we have to remember in all of this, and I know you understand this, so it's not you that has to remember this, that the Tories have such a huge financial advantage.
Yeah.
And when they can define Mark Carney any way they want to,
Yes.
or whoever the next
Yeah.
candidate is going to
Just
be.
run the
So they,
ads and
yeah, so they start from a very good, strong position against whoever they face.
I want to come back to that point about the media and how Pierre Poilievre uses that. But before we go, I didn't want to lose sight of this. Half of Canadians are open to voting strategically, says your poll in the next election. 37% of people say political parties should stick together to stop a conservative from winning. But 42% say political parties should stick together, meaning the others in the gang, to stop the liberals from winning. So they would take a coalition of the others to just stop the liberals.
Yeah, that's how deep the animosity is toward the current government. And this is a reflection of something that's been in process for several years, if not decades, which is the decline of loyalty to political parties. I mean, political parties used to be an institution that wouldn't just be politically operative; they'd be operative in the community. They'd be doing all sorts of different things. When you were a conservative, you were a conservative in all aspects of the things that you do. Same for the liberals. I mean, that was your patronage network and all the rest of it. But as those things have broken down over the years, just as like with any brand, the loyalty to this particular brand, the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP, for the general voter has really eroded. So the idea of strategic voting is actually much easier now than it used to be in the past. So they used to refer to them as loose fish.
Yeah.
Basically, what we have, the Canadian electorate, is a whole school of almost all loose fish.
So that would mean we're in some periods of our country's history doing a deal with the separatists, with the Bloc Québécois, would have been seen as unacceptable. But now just do a deal with whoever you need to do a deal with to stop X or Y.
No, I think actually the one party that's problematic in all of this is the Bloc Québécois.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because we've also seen the PQ rise like a phoenix in provincial politics. So are the Bloc Québécois the version of a sovereigntist that is contemporary with the CAC view, which is we'll get all we can within Canada and control as much as we can in Canada. But the idea of having a referendum on our future is not really in our mandate. So is the PQ this version and the Bloc this version? Are they really separatists or are they sovereigntists? Are they nativists or are they nationalists? Who are they? So until that gets sorted out, they still are a bit of a problem for any of the federalist parties to get into bed with to create a formal coalition. We saw Stéphane Dion try to do this after I think it was the 2008 election, and it just blew up in his face and it cost him the leadership of the Liberal Party.
I want to drill down and see what you're finding about some of the issues that are out there. Like, I'm surprised that the foreign interference, as I said, potential spies in our midst, isn't grabbing the public attention as much as I thought it would. We've got, the issues of immigration, what we're seeing happening on the streets, the shifting between the parties of the views on Israel and Hamas. There's a whole lot of stuff brewing. So let's just start with the general. Is this now become not about Canada being broken, but about Ottawa being broken?
Yeah, it's not that Canadians hate their neighbors and they think that they're it's that they believe that our institutions aren't delivering what they felt they were promised they would deliver, and our sense of self isn't what it once was. So George Grant wrote a book called Lament for a Nation, and I'm sure you remember it well.
I do.
And so the big argument in Grant's Lament for a Nation was that we lost our sense of self when we rejected John Diefenbaker, who was a genuine Canadian political figure, and we bought into this internationalist cabal of people around Lester Pearson, and we were losing ourselves and becoming more American. So it was this lament over that situation. That was kind of replaced by an amping up of the Laurentian consensus, right? And John Ibbotson and I talked about this in
your book.
The big shift. Well, that kind of fell apart too, because a new way of electing Canadian governments emerged after Stephen Harper. He was the proof point for that. And so he had a sense of that kind of passing us by. The question that we're dealing with now in Canada is who are we in the world, and who are we to ourselves? And the problem that Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party has been confronted with is an ability to articulate that and promote it. This is a government that has exacerbated regional tensions rather than improved regional tensions. This is a government that has exacerbated the differences among Canadians by embracing identity politics in probably a destructive way in some instances. It has not spent a lot of time articulating a real strong sense of commitment to who Canada is and what we're about and how we came about as a nation. In fact, they kind of react negatively to it, right? It's like all our faults of the past. I mean, Justin Trudeau has no problem spending a lot of time apologizing for, around the world and to Canadians in every venue that he can go to about all of the sins of the past. But his ability to actually articulate in a way that brings people together a sense of who we are today is really challenged. And so whoever the government is that's going to come forward, and this is going to be the question for Pierre Poilievre, is can you solve that problem?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about the carbon tax or whether you think it's a good idea or whether or not we should fund the CBC. It's we've lost our ability to understand what that next version of Canada is going to be. So if it's not the lament for the nation, what our Tory past was, with John Diefenbaker and all that came before that in our relationship to the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, which is what George Grant was lamenting. And if it's not the Laurentian consensus, because that's broken down because of what happened in 2011, what's that next version? So Justin Trudeau and his government has not really wrestled with that in a way that make Canadians feel better about their country. And that's one of the things that's causing this to happen. Will Pierre Poilievre or whoever succeeds Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party be able to address that in a way that makes us feel better about ourselves? Because it's not happening right now.
The virtue signaling has actually gone the other way. I mean, starting with we're living in a post-national state, which just with that statement alone says, okay, you're not a country, you're not Canada, you don't have that flag, you don't have those symbols. That seemed to be right at the very beginning, the beginning of the break as well, despite the sunny ways.
Well, I actually think the real beginning of the break was sovereignty movement in Quebec and what we went through with that. And then, interestingly enough, the election of Stephen Harper, because he suggested that there was another way that you could win a national election that didn't involve reconciling French and English differences or Quebec and Ontario differences, the rest of the country's differences through the process of an election. But the interesting thing was that Stephen Harper, and I don't want to, this isn't a partisan interpretation, but the types of cleavages that you see, institutional cleavages, like, for example, the government of Alberta feeling like it does, the government of Saskatchewan feeling like it does about the federal government, the rise of the Péquistes again in the province of Quebec. None of this was happening with Stephen Harper. There's just something about the times and the leadership of Justin Trudeau and this version of the Liberal Party that's brought this back out and also has added in these other things. And it's not unique to Justin Trudeau. I mean, this is part of the many global trends that are happening. The identity politics thing isn't unique to Canada. It isn't even really relevant to Canada. And the virtue signaling that you were talking about, that's a big part of identity politics. These are global things that are happening, or at least Western world things that are happening. And the question is, how has this government managed that? Well, it hasn't smoothed it over. It's actually enhanced it. It's used it to draw differences between Canadians. And you saw no better example of that than the, two recent examples, the Prime Minister's statement about the truckers' protest, whether you agree or disagree with them, calling them what he called them. That's not bringing Canadians together. And whatever that was with the Minister of Finance talking about the capital gains tax and the divisions that was creating in the country.
And
I
then
don't know
Armageddon
how
is around the corner. It was a very bizarre speech, actually, and I think that it kind of speaks to something that's pretty. I was reading something the other day, and I just grabbed this paragraph because I wanted you to respond to it. Like, there's a bunch of normal people in this country that just want to get on with their life, and it's very tough to do that because inflation and all of the issues that we can cite. But the elites, the people who lead, seem to be the people that just want to change everything that will upset that. They want to change the definition of sex, and they want to change the climate, and they want to change history, and they want to take away straws. I mean, some of it's pretty basic, but it's just, and everybody is either, is some form of an oppressed group, or you're on the other side of that. Like, it's a world described by the elites, described by Chrystia Freeland in that speech, that most people don't experience on a day-to-day basis. They're just saying, who are you? Like, where is it that you live that you think Armageddon will emerge if we don't have a capital gains tax and punish those horrible rich people?
Well, we get a pretty good version of who those elites, what they don't like about this country. The problem that we have right now is we don't get a sense of what they actually like.
Exactly.
And this is the problem. And until they turn their minds back to the idea that this is the greatest country on the earth and that we have created something of envy in the world, north of the 49th parallel, that is worth celebrating, and that Canadians should celebrate it, and we should do everything that we can to promote that, not in a jingoistic or egotistical kind of way, but in a way that brings people together. We are not doing that. And the danger for Pierre Poilievre is that he goes to the same place. And what Canada needs right now is not somebody who's just articulating the other side of this, but tries to find a way to bring together the country to create whatever that next consensus is going to be. And if you didn't like the Laurentian consensus, find the consensus that works for our times, because that consensus actually worked pretty well for a time.
But
doesn't work now.
That is the Poilievre issue at this point, because
Sure it is.
Not only has he spent most of his life on Parliament Hill, he's a career politician, but his job has been primarily in opposition, to attack, and say the country is broken and everything that you do is ruining the country and the country's a mess and crime is up and all, inflation is up and everybody's starving, it's hard then to on a dime say, okay, now we're back to Happy Land and have his version of sunny ways, unless he starts to build that a little bit more.
The soul of the nation cannot be abused. That's what we're dealing with right now. The soul of a nation needs to be enhanced, nurtured, respected, and honored.
Well, and healed.
And we do not have, and healed. And we at the moment are struggling to find the political players in this country, the true leaders, not politicians, not campaign strategists, the true leaders who are prepared to take on that task and bring passion to resuscitating support for our nation.
Yeah.
That's what we miss. And Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are going to face exactly the same issues that the Liberal Party faced and Justin Trudeau faced. What are they going to do with them in a way that speaks to the soul of our nation? That's their challenge ultimately. It's not about winning an election. That just gives you permission to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to do the right thing? And that's going to be his challenge. And you know what? For a time, Justin Trudeau seemed to be able to do that. He was speaking to the Times. People were very, very happy for the first couple of years with his party and with his government, and they gave him a pretty long breaking in period, combined with a lot of forgiveness for things that would have been fatal for other political leaders, and he didn't seem, I don't know the soul of the man. I don't know what he was thinking, but he didn't seem to respond in a way that would say that I'm learning.
Yeah.
That I'm learning, and that the job isn't the one that I think it is, which is just to be a political tactician and divide people in the way that I need to in order to win elections. That, winning elections is just the opportunity for you to bring your vision to the country and to bring our country together. And he did it for a period of time, and then it just seemed to have lost the plot. And he's now experiencing what happens when somebody gets in that position.
It's, I think, I mean, we have to go back, and you've talked about this eloquently, but we're losing even our symbols. I mean, I think you and I've talked about this before. If you take away citizenship ceremonies, if you constantly refer to your country and its history and its own story as evil, and bad, and something, as you said, that needs to be apologized for. I mean, we all know that we can't judge yesterday by today, and that people can grow and move on. But if we're constantly breaking down the symbols that have kept us together, and there are issues associated with that, which I want to come to in a minute, like immigration, because that used to be part of our positive. We brought people in, we brought people together, we shared with them, we had these crazy mix of identities. And instead of a nation of immigrants who built this country, we're now a nation of diasporas that we're constantly offending for whatever it is that we've done, at least according to our leadership. That's a really complicated place to be.
Well, there's, you can go back to the academy to find the sources of all of this. I mean, there is a alternate vision of reality, and I will say it's like going through another dimension, because unless you're part, it's almost like a cult, a religious cult, that when you look out and you look at things around you, you see a structure of oppressors and oppression that defines everything. This is Karl Marx, but just applied to a modern type of situation, and not looking at class, because in fact the people who are the ones who practice this actually don't like the working class,
right?
Because they see them as people who are perpetrators of some of the worst crimes that are associated with whatever oppression is, and that they don't have the right values and the right thoughts, and by the way, they didn't take the right graduate course and whatever. Those people, that needs to be put in its proper place, which is it's an interesting intellectual conversation in a graduate seminar, but it's not a way to govern a country. It's not a way to run a business. It's not a way to run an army. It's not a way to run any institutions. I mean, you have to start with the things that we agree with, And part of that is who we are and how we became who we are today, and what our expectations of responsibilities are for Canadian citizenship. And if you don't care about that, why would you expect anybody else to care about that? So it's not about apologies over and over and over and over again. It's not about getting rid of historical symbols. Yes, you need to understand them in context, but relabeling Young Dundas Square, which isn't too far away where I'm from today, Sankofa Square, is a perfect example of this permeating the country and causing the problems that we're going to have. I mean, it's become, or we're experiencing, like, what do we value that's Canadian? And what's Canadian about Sankofa? What's Toronto about Sankofa? What's Ontario about Sankofa? And the answer is nothing. It's a term from Africa. I mean, how does that apply there? Sure, we love Africans. We want them as immigrants. We want them to be productive Canadians. But what we want them to do is also adopt the values and symbols and things that we have here and embrace them as their own. Because we are, when we do it right, I mean, the diversity of Canada is a wonderful thing. It's one of the things that I hate the expression diversity is our strength, because it's not. It's our challenge.
Exactly.
It's our challenge. But that we're struggling with this challenge is a good thing. But that we use it to divide people and do things like this, it's just it doesn't lead anywhere good. It just doesn't.
This is, I guess, and also been my issue with the climate issue, the environment issue. I mean, I come from a part of the country filled with farmers. They are stewards of the land. They always have been. It is not in their interest or anybody else's interest to do that with abandon and to ruin the soil and the air and the same with the energy industry that has fueled our economy. People from across this country have come and made a living when in their part of the world things were, if the fishery was bad in Newfoundland, people went to Fort Mac and made some money, so much so that there were direct flights back and forth. Like, we have tried to solve each other's problems that way. When somebody's doing well and the other guys aren't, well, come on down and you'll have a job. And now we've turned that into, you are killing the planet, you are burning the planet, you are ruining the futures of every child that might want to work in that industry. And when in fact, both in agriculture and energy, they are kind of leading the way for the transition. And it doesn't feel like it's being recognized.
Yeah, well, and the reason for that is because we've decided to turn it into a partisan issue. And so have people, and globally they've decided to turn it into a partisan issue. There's the believers, and then there's the people who are bad. Yeah. So instead of trying to bring people together around the idea of where there is consensus, so there is consensus among farmers, among the people in the energy industry. You'd have to, there are some people who are, don't feel this way, but they're a very small percentage of the population. That climate change is real.
Yeah.
I mean, human activities make some contributing factor. You can argue as to the amount. There's different models out there for this, that there's some things that we need to do in order to improve the situation, and we need to treat it with some degree of urgency. And you know what? Left, right, for the most part, people agree on this. But when you start doing things that cause individual people to think that the sacrifice that you're asking them to make, doesn't make sense, is not affordable in their lives, and you start using it when they oppose or they push back on this as a statement about their character rather than as legitimate concerns about how some of these things are being implemented, that's when you cause problems, and that's where we've found ourselves. So the Minister of the Environment in Canada, the Prime Minister, and others of this government have decided to make it part of their kind of divide and conquer strategy in this country. They certainly did it against Andrew Scheer when he ran as a leader of the Conservative Party. They decided to make the opposition to the oil and gas industry and to traditional farming practices or whatever, or maybe even modern industrial farming practices, that as the bad guy in the election campaign. So don't be surprised when they come out on the other side and push back, which is exactly what's happening. But then on the other side of this, if you think that you're an industry and that you can keep behaving the way that you always behaved in the world, and with the air that we all share and with the environment that we all share, you have a responsibility to be good stewards too. So let's reduce the partisanship and let's focus on the problems. And the interesting thing on this, there's a lot of consensus around it. I mean, if you ask Canadians whether or not they think the climate is an important issue, 80% say it is. You go out and ask them if human beings are responsible for it. Absolutely, vast majority think that there is. And do we need to do something about it? Yes, we do. Then we get into a difficult conversation, which is what we need to do about it. And that's where you need to sell people in a way that brings people together rather than divides them. And we've had political parties in this country on both the left and right who've decided to use this as an issue of cleavage, and that is not good for the country.
Well, the trouble is a lot of it just doesn't make sense. When Stephen Guilbeault says he doesn't want to build highways, and then, that'll make people ride their bikes and not take their cars. But you've got them spending $59 billion in an EV industry, which those cars also need to drive on highways. We see the Prime Minister on a plane every other day of the week going to climate meetings. Like, at a certain point, they're not dumb, and they're saying, you're asking me to give up my way of life, but you're not.
And what's happening is that the political opponents are organizing around it. So if you take a look at what's very interesting, for example, in the parliamentary elections that just happened in Europe, but you're also seeing it happen in other places. You're seeing it happen in the United States right now, where not only is nativist nationalism, and we shouldn't even get rid of nativist out of this because it's not just about nativism anymore. Nationalism and nationalist options, particularly from the right, being fueled by people's opposition to the way the immigration issue is being handled in many countries. Now the whole green agenda is coming into this. So you see farmers' parties becoming part of what's going on. You see people living in rural and small towns who are, rejecting the policies that are coming out of the European Commission because the actual costs of making the change are coming into their lives. You're even seeing it in Canada, which forced the government to do something that nobody thought they would do, which is to get rid of the carbon tax on home heating oil in Atlantic Canada, because the practicalities got in the way of the philosophy. It's a complicated issue, but what we're starting to see is that the reactions to that are now becoming organized politically and are having effect.
Do you actually sense, and we were talking to your U.S. colleague Cliff Young a couple of weeks ago, and we had a bit of this discussion, like, are we starting to see that actually break down in terms of, I don't know, the DEI and all the woke rhetoric that's there? Are people really starting to say, okay, hold the phone here now? That just doesn't make sense in our little town or in our school.
What people, so Canadians, would agree with is, are there certain groups that have probably been discriminated against in the past in terms of things like hiring and other things? Their answer would be yes. Should we be doing things to make sure that our political institutions or public institutions, whatever you want to take a look at, are representative of the public that they're designed to serve? The answer is yes. Do we need to spend every waking moment counting the number of people who are in meetings to make sure that the gender diversity in the room is exactly correct? The answer is that sounds nuts. And then the other one is, particularly among people who are not part of the groups that have been identified as needing some sort of support, maybe some redress. If you're on the other side of that, it didn't matter when you weren't paying a price for it, but in some instances now people are paying a price for it, and they're not getting a job because somebody else is getting a job because of this. And if using race or gender or whatever you want to use was a reason for keeping somebody out, that was wrong. So using it as a reason to put somebody in, that's probably equally wrong because you're discriminating against somebody else. So I think the whole affirmative action movement is being struck down in the United States. We're seeing this with DEI, and so this is confusing for people. But the general principle of the need to make sure that institutions are representative of the people that they serve, Canadians are pretty strongly aligned with that.
And I find that it's just when things get when you have cabinet ministers walking around with menstrual bracelets on, while did you miss that little story? So,
Oh, I saw it.
you've got that kind of at a time when the economy is in big trouble, when people are wondering whether they'll keep their jobs, where they're fearful about the future. And it just seems out of sync that we're finding a victim somewhere every day when actually everybody is feeling the pinch of the economic crisis.
Well, that's because class, which used to define
Yeah,
politics, no longer defines it.
yeah,
So what now defines it is identity. And particularly if you're a liberal, and the liberals are trying to find a way to use these cleavages in order to build a coalition. And you can see how well that's working based on the polling results we started this conversation with, which is, and it's the, this kind of approach to looking at the world is kind of going out of fashion. But what I will say is that the Overton window, the range of acceptable discourse on this has moved in a progressive direction during the course of Justin Trudeau's period in office. Some of it is because of him and the choices that his government has made, but a lot of it is being driven by what's been happening around the world. Some people would see that as a refreshing thing. Some of the people would see that as a challenge. My big problem in all of this is it doesn't define a country.
yeah.
And so
You
I know
just
what you're
keep
against. I
coming
know what
back
you're
to that. Yeah,
against.
yeah,
I know what you're against. But what is your full-throated
yeah,
defense of who we are? What are the symbols that you like? What
yeah.
is it that you like about us? And don't say diversity is our strength, because that's meaningless.
Yeah. But maybe what we could do is fund the military and meet some of our commitments internationally to our allies, and allow the thousands of young men and women who are trying to sign up actually get in. you
Well,
know.
and when the opposition says that Canada is broken, this is an example of Canada being broken. It's like walking downtown in any city and seeing people, poor struggling people, dealing with things like opioid addiction and
Yeah,
homelessness and the rest of it. Okay, well, these are things that you fought to be able to deal with by running an election and telling us that you were able to deal with it. If it's gotten visually, in
yeah,
particular, worse over time, that's on you.
yeah,
And so when people see that kind of thing, they turn to their institutions and say, "This is not the Canada that I thought I signed up for. This is not the city of Regina that I thought I signed up for," or wherever you want to take a look. And they're sitting there saying, "Whatever you're doing is not working.
yeah,
This has to change." Whatever the solutions are, as long as these issues are somehow managed so that the people who find themselves in these circumstances actually get back on a path to being supported and getting back functioning in society, then we're happy. And it's not just a matter of seeing it; it's just the experience of it. It's just debilitating. So when Canadians are saying Canada's broken, they're not saying their neighbors are broken. What they're saying is that their institutions are broken, their
yeah,
leaders are broken. What's being delivered is not what we expect. And that's why there's such a huge demand for change in this country. And
yeah,
it's not even just the change in the policies, it's the change in the actors.
yeah.
That's what it is. That's why everything the government keeps throwing out is just like throwing a rubber ball against a wall and having it bounce
It
back,
just
because they've
keeps.
said it's guys, it's not what you're doing, it's you.
Yeah.
It's you.
And you're
And
not listening. They're not hearing, like this messaging on capital gains, kind of a crude political move to take it out of the budget, thinking that it would put Pierre Poilievre in a trap, only to have it backfire, right? Which
well,
is
this
out
is
talking
well, this
about
is
punishing the rich, which happens to be the plumber that lives next door, the doctor that you're trying to have an appointment with. Like it just it doesn't ring true.
Well, the way I would describe it, Senator, is it's like one of those old Roadrunner cartoons. Remember those? Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? And, this government and the political strategists that are around it remind me of Wile E. Coyote. They keep going back to the Acme store
Yeah.
to try and find something that's going to work. And every trap is more elaborate. And the Roadrunner is just standing there saying, "I'm just waiting to run. I'm just
Yeah.
waiting to run. All we're going to do is we're going to run. And I know who wins the run." And so they're playing with their Acme store stuff, and nothing's changing. The Roadrunner's not getting eaten by the Coyote. The Coyote's only getting more beat up every day,
Yeah.
and that's where we are in the political cycle right now.
You've done a lot of international work too at Ipsos, because I think you're in 90 countries or something, 29 countries. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's actually is
It's
90.
90. Okay. And
Yeah.
then you tested, I think, in 29. And there's 100 things there that are interesting, but young people losing faith that their country is a meritocracy. Old people have already lost that faith. But when young ones actually say it doesn't matter whether I'm good at what I do or how hard I work or how hard I try, that's not going to get me from point A to point B. That is so basic. Um, and I do think that we need to address those issues, because to me, that does go to the soul of the country. That is the country I understood, where hard work got you somewhere and you felt good about it.
Yeah, I'm very worried about people under the age of 40 in this country. And the reason I'm worried about them is they seem to have given up on the future. And that sounds like a stunning indictment, but everything that you look at shows that
Yeah.
we've got a problem.
Yeah.
But we've also got, and the way that this is probably going to find itself out, I'll give you two examples. One example as to why we can see it is that we've decided to stop having kids.
Yeah.
Right?
You've written a
And
whole book about this. The
yeah,
empty planet.
Darwin said that each generation of any species competes to create the next better version of what the next generation is going to be. We've said, not so much. And some people say it's because, of climate or the way the world is or whatever. But a lot of it is we just don't feel that group just doesn't feel that level of commitment to a society that doesn't seem to be paying off for them, particularly in the developed world. And the potential for real intergenerational strife between older people in this country, and by that I mean people over the age of 40, but say over the age of 50, which is the increasing section of the Canadian population. We age more every day. They have all the money. They had all the best jobs. They have the pensions. They're actually sitting in all the best real estate. And then there's another group of people that are on the other side of that have given up on the future, feel they've done all the right things, but they can't buy the house in the neighborhood that they lived in, that they were raised in with their parents. They're really, really struggling. And there's nobody that's figured out a way to pull that gap together. You want a political agenda for somebody for the future? Fix that one.
Yeah. I agree. We didn't kind of get to Mr. Polyev and the media and all of that, but maybe we'll do that the next time. Because I think we've got some. What are your best guesses on this anyway? There's lots of chatter in this town every day that an election could be called, that the prime minister might resign. That I don't think either of those things are going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but who knows?
Well, there's three things that can happen. One of them is that the prime minister can resign, and that's the usual response to this type of situation. Justin Trudeau is a very capable political operator. He sees himself, and we've seen this written in some recent books that have come out and pamphlets that have come out. Sees these things like a boxing match, and he's always underestimated. But sometimes you got to recognize when you're up against Mike Tyson. And I'm not saying Pierre Poilievre is Mike Tyson. I'm saying the current environment and the current situation is Mike Tyson. It's not Senator Brazo. You're up against somebody who's going to, not somebody, but circumstances that are going to punish you. So I think he's stubborn, but I don't believe that he's stupid. He has to understand the circumstances and how long the shots are. And then is he prepared to stay around and go through that? I'm of the view that most political leaders would have that conversation with themselves alone at one night and realize when time is over and it's time to pass the torch to somebody else. But he is who he is. He's going to decide what he wants to do. The other one is we're going to have an election. Now, one way to clear the air is to do just that. Whether it's the NDP triggering one, now they've lost their chance because today's like the last question period or whatever. They gave it away for nothing.
Yeah.
For nothing. So at some point, maybe the prime minister says enough is enough, and he goes to the governor general and says, Madam Governor General, I believe that we've reached an impasse. The numbers are so bad, Canadians need to make a choice, and find a fundamental choice and make a choice. He either does that, or the NDP is going to do it to him by the time we hit the next budget.
Yeah.
Because they can't pass up another opportunity. They shouldn't have passed up this one, to be honest.
But it's going to be a brutal summer with these kinds of numbers, and people literally feeling the heat financially. That it's not. I can't see how it gets better.
Well, it can't. I mean, that's the problem. There's nothing that as I said before, the Liberal government, everything that it does right now is like throwing a rubber ball against the wall and having it bounce back at them. I mean, they ran out their genius way of releasing the budget, and all they did was focus on the bad news, which was the capital gains tax. And like I said, I mean, everyone, it's like watching the Roadrunner cartoon. They keep going back to the Acme store to come up with something new. And the Roadrunner's just standing there watching and saying, I know exactly what you're doing. I'm not going to fall into that trap. What did Pierre Poilievre do when they did the capital gains thing? He wouldn't dare vote against it. Not only did he vote against it,
exactly.
vote against it, they said they were going to lower taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. That shows you how secure they're feeling right now.
Well, and also, I think most people would have seen that. Like, his whole issue is tax. Anyway, that's a whole other discussion. This is.
It made no sense to me. I go on. Whenever I have the patience for it, I'll engage sometimes on X to talk to people about this. But it's for the true believers, there's no other way of seeing things than the way that you're seeing them. But just as in everything in business, Senator, you know this well, the market tells you.
Yep.
It's a good idea, it'll sell.
Yeah.
Just the same thing in politics. If it's a good idea, it moves the numbers and people come on side and they support you. It doesn't matter how clever it is. If it doesn't work, it's just clever.
Yeah. Okay. I have to ask. I have to ask this because it will affect what happens here. And I think Poilievre is still seen as somebody who might be able to deal with Trump more effectively. I'm not sure. I think those numbers you might have a view on that. Do you think Trump wins? What's your bet?
I'm sure Cliff gave you an opinion on this.
Yes.
I think his depending on the day you talk to him, it tends to be one way or the other. But the fundamentals are favoring Trump.
Yeah.
If you take a look at, in fact, we had a new poll out today in the U.S. Not just in Canada. We just did I think it was 6 battleground states or 5 in the U.S. In all of them, the approval level for Biden is in the mid 30s. You don't win in the mid 30s, and so I'm compelled to remind people, Trump did not look this good going into 16, and he definitely didn't look this good going into 2020.
Exactly.
If the polls do anything, they tend to underestimate his support. So, as I said, I don't know what Cliff said. I'll have to go back and watch the video.
Well, the first time we talked, he said no, it was Biden, but this time he was he really said no. The same as you. The numbers are the numbers. Now, lots of stuff can happen, but he got through. That first court case. Courts. It's just awful to watch all this, and the numbers went up, and so did the fundraising.
But in some ways, Donald Trump shares the following with Pierre Poilievre. I'm not saying in values or anything else.
Yeah.
He represents change.
Yeah.
So just like Doug Ford did and Rob Ford did, it's like, who's the biggest hand grenade I can pull the pin on and try and get people's attention? Donald Trump is that in the United States. In Canada, it's Pierre Poilievre. In Ontario, it was Doug Ford. In Toronto, it was Rob Ford. In Manitoba, it was Rob Canoe. I mean, it can be people from the left or right, but who best represents change? And that's what Trump's got going for him. And the biggest problem that Biden has, and I'm sure Cliff said this to you because we've had many talks about it, is not his age.
No.
In fact, age may not even be that correlated to how people are voting. The biggest problem that he has is the agenda that he's facing.
Yeah.
And as long as cost of living and immigration are at the top of the agenda and protection of democracy is below that, Donald Trump's in a great position.
Yeah, he absolutely said that. And I agree 1,000%. This is actually about substance. It's not the age question is not the one, although the mental acuity is an issue, but it still seems to be the actual substance.
It's the substance of the campaign, and it's the same thing in Canada, where people feel that the status quo can no longer hold, and that something has to change. So they're voting for the option that appears to be the most genuinely committed to change. Whatever change it is, they just want something different. The problem isn't the message from the government; it's the messenger. They've become Wile E. Coyote and a rather tattered version of that.
Always great, Darrell, to talk with you. Thank you for this. I'm glad. Are you working on any other book, or are you in a?
Oh, I'm thinking, and I bet you can just glean through what I was talking about what I'm thinking.
Okay, I'm waiting for that. Darrell Bricker.
Well, I'd love to see you sometime in person, Senator, so we can.
Yeah, I'm tired of this.
all
You're
of
right.
it.
We'll have a lunch or something one of these days, real soon.
And it's always a privilege, and I'm so glad that you take the time to invite me. You've been a very important person in my career over the years, and it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have the opportunity to continue to talk to you. So let's keep talking for sure.
Okay, we'll keep talking. Darrell Bricker, thank you for all those nice things. Checks in the mail. It'll be $5.
No, don't stop.
CEO of Ipsos Public Affairs. All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
And that is it for this edition of No Nonsense with Pamela Wallen. We'll see you soon too.